pin is a very important element of strategy and tactics. Almost in every game, we could see pins, actually on both sides. It's not as deadly as a skewer because you can stay there. It's sometimes the pin, could last for many moves without causing real damage. But still, let us look at the structure, how it works. That's the simple form. We have bishop on big diagonal on b2, knight on f6, and put a black queen hiding behind this knight. So it's a pin. We can call it a relative pin because black knight can move, though I don't think you want to do it because the queen is there. So it's a pin. And it happens many times, for instance, in many openings, you have black queen standing on d8, knight on f6, and bishop on g5, for instance. That happens in many, many, many games, many openings. So yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of. Just remember that, if you have a more valuable piece behind, less valuable piece, just be aware. It could be just another form of pin that has more decisive effect. It's a kind of a relative pin, so is this a position that I can put in. So now black rook is on c5 is pinned by white rook on g5. And of course, black rook can take white rook, but then the pawn will be promoted. So that's an important tool, important tactical element. Sometimes in the end games or even in the middle games, you use this form of pin to advance either your pawn or just to get something by deflecting opponent's piece from doing something important, like in this case, preventing our pawn from promotion. But there are also something which we call absolute pins. For instance, absolute because in this case, rook is pinned and it cannot move legally because the king is behind it. So that's why this rook is paralyzed. This pin definitely is more dangerous because it not only limits the potential of your pieces, but also it may cause other serious problems because by using the pin, your opponent can create threats surrounding in the surrounding areas. Let's look at a couple of examples how we can use pin as a mechanism to achieve our goals. So let's start with a simple position. If you look at this endgame, it seems roughly even. Even black has an extra pawn. But there's a trick that white can use based on the pin concept and also on the fact that our pawn, if we play white, so our pawn h6 is advanced. That's why if we can force the exchange of rooks after rook g8 check, king c7, rook g7, then after exchange, our pawn will advance. So black has to defend this rook. So it can go knight g5. But then we bring our bishop. We continue this attack. We are trying to force this exchange. And you see the pin. Legally, black rook cannot leave the 7th rank. So it goes on d7. It desperately tries to stay its course. But we continue the attack. We're still pushing this rook. It goes back on f7, hoping desperately for repetition of the moves, but now we attack it from e8. We attack it from there, and it seems that black has nothing else but to take our rook, and then our pawn will advance to promotion and will win the game. Just for completing this sample, I can say that if black instead of knight g5 goes on d6 with a knight, then we still attack the rook with our bishop. If knight takes the bishop, then rook is hanging. And after rook d7, we attack now from e6, reaching the same result. So this simple example shows you the power of the pin and how much it limits the opponent's pieces if they're pinned, and what can you do by using the pin to enlarge your advantage. I also once benefited from using the pin, and that was quite a rare game at the top level. I played at this tournament again in Novgorod against tournament game against Russian Grandmaster Evgeny Barayev, and we reached an endgame with 2 rooks versus rook and knight. Professionals know that pawnless endgames are very, very rare guests in top tournaments. And Barayev expected the draw to be agreed, but I saw no reason why not to just move pieces around, because 2 rooks are 2 rooks, and the wild position is drawn, but I could always keep creating threats because rooks could attack from afar, and though his pieces were fairly close, he still had some problems to solve, and at one point he collapsed and made the decisive blunder and let me win with the pin. And what do you expect? If you have 2 rooks, pins are very natural, and here was the position. Black just made the final decisive mistake, and I played rook e6. So offering this exchange, eliminating this rook, and this pin. You see this pin? It's an absolute pin because knight cannot move. Leads to winning material, and it's a decisive advantage. So black resigned. So pin in the endgame is far more dangerous tool than in the openings, because you have very few pieces, if any, to defend the piece that is pinned. Let's look at a couple of positions where we can realize the power of the pin. This is an endgame. Looks very simple. Rooks, 2 rooks, 2 knights, 4 pawns. It seems there's no more excitement left. But for a moment, black created this potential problem by having rook and knight at the same line. But if white simply tries to pin with rook f3, then king defends the knight, and we have nothing. We don't have any way of putting more pressure on this knight. So that's why all we need is just to make an intermediate check, rook e2. We're attacking the king, and if king runs on d4, then we do a fork. Remember? Fork. Double attack, king and rook, winning the material. And if king goes on f5, then we'll go rook e3, and then we'll win because of the pin. Black has no way but sacrificing an exchange and having a totally lost endgame. So it's important. Just another important thing, intermediate move. Often happens. You can easily miss it because you look at moves like rook f3 to create immediate threat, but actually rook e2 wins because it destroys black's coordination, so pushes the king. So that's also quite useful example. Very few pieces left, but I think it's quite instructional. Let's have a look at this position. White has material advantage. It has, you may say, extra piece, because queen is roughly equal to 2 rooks, but white has an extra bishop. But the problem is that this bishop is pinned. And it's an absolute pin because there's a king there, and black is preparing to go rook c1 just to have a second rook attacking this bishop. And by the way, there will be another attack with from there. But no matter what, if black rook shows on c1, it's an exchange on f1, black recovers the piece, and it's at best for white will be draw. Technically, white can go c6 by trying to bring the for instance, bishop 6, bishop e3, trying to bring bishop back to protect c1 square, but then black can go rook b4, and then rook shows on b1, and it's with the same effect. So there's no way white can win. So what can we do? So is any way we can eliminate this pin and to sort of shoot back to use the fact that we have a queen, we have a couple of bishops. And the trick is that if you look at these diagonal, so you find out that king is open. So that's why if this bishop can become free from this deadly pin, absolute pin, it could cause a lot of damage. And by just making this calculation in your mind, you can find a move. Fantastic move, queen a2. So we are sacrificing the queen, but it's not a sacrifice because if black takes, now our bishop becomes, crazy elephant, just it takes one rook, and then after the king moves, it takes another rook. So it destroys everything. So let's have a look again. Queen a2. So we attack this rook. We prepare the release of the bishop, our elephant, hiding here, to go to the open. And also we pin this rook. So we prevent rook c1. So it's an amazing concept that in one move you can have three different elements that are eventually helping you to win the game. I have to apologize for shifting to my Russian vocabulary, because in Russian, bishop is called elephant slon. And when I saw this damage that this bishop released from this this deadly pin caused for black's position by winning two rooks, so I couldn't help but thinking that it was a raging elephant. And now we have our challenge. Have a look. It's a complicated position. Material balance is broken. White create an attack. And we could see two pins. Black knight is pinned and black bishop is pinned. But the problem is that black seemed to defend everything nicely. Queen is centralized, protecting the rook. Rook protects the bishop. And how white can improve its position? So what else we can do? We don't have more resources. Pawns are totally useless. Rooks already doubled. So queen. What can we do with our queen? It also seems, if not useless, but not very practical. But an amazing moment where white can actually create a new pin, one extra pin, and I'll let you find it. Okay, did you find this pin? A third one, a decisive one. Because it's not just a pin, but it's also our tool to destroy black's coordination. So, and suddenly we move queen away. It seems all the action's here. But remember, queen is a very powerful piece. It can attack from afar. And queen goes on b8. And it's another pin. And it's hard to believe, but black has no defense against rook takes g7, because everything here is now paralyzed. There's no way black can defend. This pin is decisive. Black can go queen e7, hoping desperately that after rook takes g7, queen takes g7, white maybe takes on g7, and then black has some drawing chances, because position is not easy to win. Black had two pieces well coordinated. But we have a new pin. Queen is protecting the rook. Does it? No, it doesn't protect the rook, because we should remember this is an absolute pin. Queen is in front of the king, so which means it's pinned, and we can simply take the rook and win the game. So it's quite an amazing compilation of three different pins. And the one that looks least impressive Let's go back. Queen b8, really far away. That one is the decisive pin. But of course, white pieces are suddenly well coordinated because attack on bishop on g7 is a decisive one. Hence, likely the most common tool that we use all the time. I can hardly imagine another element of the game that could be employed in the openings, in the middle game, in the end game. While the pins vary in its effectiveness, knowing how to use them is very, very effective, because pins, they always help you to paralyze opponent's pieces. And that's one of the important secrets of success, because it's not just about activity of your pieces, but you also have to make sure that opponent pieces are limited in their ability to operate and to cause damage to you.